Okay, so after the disappointment that was Iron Man 3 and the lackluster filler that was Thor the Dark World, in my view, Phase 2 had two strikes against it and it wasn't looking good because I was not crazy about those two aforementioned films. So Captain America to me had a lot riding on its shoulders, and this movie's a home run. That's it. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is amazing. It is the best Marvel. It is the best movie of Phase Two, and quite possibly one of the best Marvel movies made to date. Uh, what can I say about the Winter Soldier? I don't know. There's so much I want to cover. There's so much I want to say. So I'm going to try and be as constructive and as orderly as I possibly can. Warning: I probably will be doing jumping. I probably will be doing jumping around, but I'm going to try and keep it as contained as humanly possible. Uh, let's just kick it off with the. Let's just kick it off right now. The acting in this movie is superb. By far, this is Chris Evans' best performance as Captain America, Steve Rogers, by far. The complexity his character is given, the depth his character is given, and throughout every single obstacle that gets thrown in his way. And just when you think that it's just about to be all over for him, he still manages to maintain that his core principle, which to me is awesome and is fantastic. That no matter what, you're not going to change this man's beliefs. He believes in one. He believes in one way, and that's the way that has kept true to him, which is what harkens back to that first Avenger. He's a guy that will do things, that does things for good reasons, not for other people's reasons or other beliefs. He believes he will do things for what he believes is true and what he believes is right, and he maintains that throughout the entire course of the film, which is fantastic. Uh, we get to Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, and like in the Avengers, Black Widow's awesome. She has a lot of cool moments, a lot of cool scenes. Her and Rogers have a lot of cool bantering back and forth. There's this running joke where Black Widow is trying to get Steve Rogers a date, which is pretty funny. There's this really cool, intense, and humorous moment scene at a mall where they're trying to not be detected by the by Captain America's former strike team who's turned against him. And the reason why the strike team's turned against him is because in scenes prior, Nick Fury was killed by the Winter Soldier, and of course Alexander Pierce, who is the head of Shield, you know is wants to know what exactly Nick Fury told Rogers when Rogers found Fury hiding out in his house and was eventually killed by the Winter Soldier. So being that Pierce believes that Steve is pretty much against him, he pretty much has the entire he pretty much puts Captain America on the most wanted list, and pretty much sorry about that. And it's pretty much I just lost my train of thought. Okay, and he's pretty much using Shield as a way to bring Captain America back. Of course, this also led to a really cool, intense, awesome fight scene in an elevator where Captain America takes down the entire strike team, which was a close court. It's a close directed scene, action sequence, and it's perfect. Uh, Another character. Speaking of Nick Fury, another character that was well rounded out in this movie was Nick Fury, who actually has things to do in this movie. Like Black Widow, he's made an interesting character because when talking to Steve Rogers, uh, Captain America tells Rogers a story about his granddad, who was like a elevator uh, attendant person thing, and he tells a story about how his granddad loved people and liked work, and then in the years later, the neighborhood he was working in started getting a little rougher, and granddad was starting to carry a gun in his bag with crumbled up ones, and Fury has the line, which to me is pretty much the basis of the movie. You know, Granddad loved people, but he didn't trust them. And that's kind of what Fury has. You know, he loves and wants to protect the people, but he doesn't fully trust them. But he doesn't fully trust the people he's protecting. And that says a lot, really. It really does say a lot. And it really plays into the whole, like, political commentary that this film covers, but doesn't get too preachy with. You know, it covers themes like, you know, compartmentalization and doing things for a greater good, and what is more evil, like the world you live in, or the people that are actually manipulating the world. So it's like it throws a lot of those things at you, but it does it in a way where it serves the story, and it doesn't get lost, and the story doesn't get lost in the shuffle. If anything, the story in these political themes are woven into the greater deal, and are placed into where they can serve the entire MCU as a whole in the future to come. And of course, that to me is the mark of expert writing, and writing done extremely well. And I also want to give a big shout out to the directing of this movie done by the Russo brothers, who did a fantastic job with the Winter Soldier. Russo brothers are my favorite directors right now in the MCU. They killed it in Winter Soldier. I love the work on Civil War, and I can't wait for the aforementioned Infinity War to come soon enough. But let's get back to what we're doing. We get to the villain, and now, of course, the movie, of course, has, you know, two villains. We got the main antagonist and the secondary antagonist. We'll get to the main antagonist, who is Alexander Pierce, played by Robert Redford, who was the king of the political thrillers back in the 70s and the 80s. He pretty much plays, Fury's superior in S.H.I.E.L.D. And, of course, they also have a history of being very close friends. And through, you know, dialogue exchanges, we understand exactly how their friendship came about. And those dialogue exchanges alone could make for a very interesting prequel movie to themselves. Like the relationship between Fury and Pierce, and how their friendship came about, and how all that started, and how all that came about. I think that can make for a really cool movie, or maybe a cool one shot or more of a one shot if they would ever do that again. But yeah, Pierce has got he's just a very interesting character. It's like I want to know more. I want to if I do have a gripe, I didn't get a lot about. I didn't get too much about Pierce, but what I did get about Pierce made me very interested to want to know more, because this man is. I'm not gonna say diabolical, but he's definitely someone that is a good manipulator, and the way he was able to manipulate Fury into carrying out Hydra's ideas, because in this film it's revealed that Hydra has been growing from inside S.H.I.E.L.D. for the past 70 years, and you know Pierce is an agent of Hydra, and I love the whole notion how he was able to manipulate Fury into believing he was doing things for a greater good, when in fact he was doing things for Hydra's greater good, which I thought was really, really cool. And of course we get to the secondary antagonist, being the aforementioned Winter Soldier. And I love the scenes with the Winter Soldier. His scenes are just so amazing. His first scene, when you first see him, he shoots like this bomb gun at Nick Fury, and his van topples over. Of course, prior to that, Nick Fury had his own cool scene where, you know, he was taking out a bunch of Hydra members dressed as police officers, and he was mowing them down, and having a cool car chase with that too. And of course, Winter Soldier and Captain America also have this really cool chase scene shortly after Winter Soldier kills Fury. They have a cool chase scene, which of course ends with the iconic shot of the Winter Soldier catching the Captain America shield. And then later on in the film, Winter Soldier and Black Widow have their own cool little scene together. And that actually plays off an earlier line where Widow, shortly after Fury's dead, tells Cap that she had a previous run-in with the Winter Soldier, as he shot a bullet that went right through her and killed the scientist she was protecting. So a history between those two was also planted at, which could make for another interesting movie if they decide to go the route of a Black Widow solo movie, which I which I would prefer that be more of like a one shot. I think it can make a pretty cool one shot. That whole like story that she told Cap. I think that can make a good one shot movie. But yeah, her and Winter Soldier have a cool fight sequence, and of course there's the big epic battle at the end between Winter Soldier and Cap, and the big revelation that happened that we learned that Bucky is with the Winter Soldier, and of course that once again is an obstacle that's thrown in Cap's way because he finds out that his friend of pretty much however many decades is alive, is has been brainwashed and manipulated to being pretty much an instrument of Hydra, and of course, Rogers has the dilemma: does he kill his friend or what does he do? And the conflict that wrestles within him is just adds on to the complexity, and I love it. Of course, we get to the new addition, which is Sam Wilson as Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie. And I agree with everyone. Anthony Mackie comes across as the most likable guy in this movie. He comes across like the coolest guy in the world. It's like you want him, you want to be friends with this man. That's how cool and just laid back he comes in there. And the fast growing, friendship between Rogers and Wilson is organic, and their opening scene together is great, where where they just have like a friendly race, like an unknownly, it starts with them jogging, and then Steve keeps saying on your left, and then it turns into like a friendly competition, and then at the end, they have a cool little bantering back and forth about, Rogers being back and stuff like that, and of course there's another cool scene where Sam Wilson, who works at a VA hospital, is giving a little speech, and they also have another conversation also about how Riley is wrestling with the fact that how Sam is wrestling with the fact that his partner Riley was gunned down during a mission, and of course they continue, and of course their friendship goes from there. When we see them again, Rogers and Natasha are now, when they are wanted on the run, after finding out from Amenzola, who had transferred his subconscious into a computer, gives the reveal that Hydra has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. They go to seek refuge with Falcon in his house, and of course that is when Falcon, hands in his resume to join Cap in his fight. And once again, that relationship continues to grow, it continues to get even better, and I can't wait to see more of Sam and and Rogers together, because their partnership and relationship is just so much fun. I want to see more. Now we get to the action set pieces. As of course I mentioned throughout the course of I mentioned action set pieces earlier. Now I'm going to get to other ones, like the opening scene, which takes place on the Illumined Star Wars, like this freighter boat, and which is also a really cool scene where you see Cap with his strike team taking down like these terrorists who have hostages and shit like that. And of course, Cap gets into a good hand-to-hand combat fight with Batroc, which was a pretty cool hand-to-hand fight. And I want to go on record and say this, that while the CG in this movie can come across as spotty in some cases and really good in other areas, its use of practical effects is amazing. The practical effects in this movie look fantastic. The explosions, the car flips, they all look great. Once again, Russo brothers, excellent job at mixing practical with digital. Because to me, that's how the effects look better. When you mix the real with the computer, it makes everything look more realistic in a way. So, big ups to that. And of course, there's other action set pieces too. There's Natasha, and of course we find out that Fury was not dead, but was pretty much hanging on by a thread until he was found. Was never dead. He kind of faked his death. We find that out, and of course, he and Romanoff have their big showdown with Pierce, which was also really intense and also really cool too. Falcon gets into like a little brawl with Brock Rumlow, who is the leader of the strike team, who is the leader of the strike team assigned to take down Cap. So they have their own little cool scene. Of course, there's also the cool scene where the Falcon is trying to like dodge these like jet pilots and missiles and stuff like that, which also look pretty cool. And of course, there's the big climactic end between Bucky and Cap on the helicarriers, which is being used as a thing called Project Insight, in which they are tasked to eliminate any potential threats to Hydra. They have these 3 helicarriers to take them down. And of course, Cap's mission is to disable those helicarriers. And as he's about to disable the last one, he and Bucky get into this big giant brawl, and it's amazing. And once again, the directing is solid. Okay, so now I got all that covered. Now we get to the end of the film. Now, in a previous brief flashback scene before the climax started, we see a scene between Bucky and Rogers, and they have this line where Bucky says, "I'm with you to the end of the line," and that they echo that line once again, just as the Winter Soldier is about to give Cap the kill shot. Cap says, "I'm with you to the end of the line," and Sebastian Stan's portrayal acting in this movie is awesome. Like, he has very minimal dialogue to work with, so everything's based on facial expressions, and he does a fantastic job with it. Like, he's a very underrated actor. I'm surprised he doesn't get enough work, because the guy is really, really good. But you can see like his emotion, his expression change when Rogers said that line, and like he's like a flickering light is starting to dim in his brain, like a repressed memory. Because throughout the movie we see that he's being brainwashed, and that he was found and was turned to this weapon. But we can see like a flickering light in his brain, like he's starting to remember something. And of course, we see him pull, Cap out of the lake, and that sets, Bucky on his course to a possible redemption in the later film to come. And of course, the movie wraps up with both Cap and Sam pretty much saying they're gonna be on the look. They're gonna be joining up to find Bucky and try to save him. Now we get to the 2 big post-credit scenes of this film. The first one, which introduces us to Baron von Strucker, who is in his division of Hydra, and of course his division of Hydra has found Loki's scepter, and with that scepter, they used it on 2 volunteers who happened to be Quicksilver and now Scarlet Witch, and they gave them their powers, which is Quicksilver, who has immense speed, and Scarlet Witch, who can control things with her mind. With the power, it's implied that with Loki's scepter, they gave him those powers. So, Von Strucker, Quicksilver, and Loki, and Scarlet Witch, of course, those 3 characters were set up because their time to shine is going to be in Age of Ultron, and of course, this sets them up for Ultron. But then we get to the last scene, the actual last after-credit scene, is where you see the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian actually played a role early on in the movie. It's also the place that holds, Cap's original uniform. And before I get into the end credit scene, I like the whole dynamic of Captain America having 2 different suits. I like the whole idea of him having like this dark blue shield suit, which is the suit that that pretty much implies that he's pretty much Shield's hired gun, and he's pretty much doing their dirty work. But then at the end of the movie, he gets like his original costume. And he goes from being Shield's hired gun to being that beacon of hope, so to speak, when he puts on the original costume, which I thought was a good contrast, and I really liked that a lot. But anyway, to get back to the last credit scene, we see Bucky, and we see Bucky reading about himself, and of course that throws it out there that Bucky's not only going to learn about it, that Bucky's not only going to go on a quest for potential redemption, but also a quest to find out who he is. And it's great. It sets up Civil War perfectly, and what that movie ends up doing with Bucky and the Winter Soldier, with the Winter Soldier as a whole. So, yes, this movie is and yes, Of course, this movie, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, is a solid 10 out of 10. I gave the points. I made my points as clear as I possibly could of all the positives. Very few negatives. If I do have any negatives, it's not enough Winter Soldier. But at the same time, well, it's a negative. It's not It's not taken away from the grade because at least they used the Winter Soldier to their advantage, which is have him appear when the story necessitates him to appear. Don't just have him be there because you want to see more. If the story requires him to be at a certain place, then have him be in that place. Don't have him just show up through the entire movie because then he's just there for no reason. So I like the fact that they have the Winter Soldier appear when the story dictates it. Like I said, a lot of the CG could be spotty in some areas, but again, that does not take away from the grade. If anything, those 2 points I mentioned are just nitpicks to an overall perfect movie, in my view. Like I said, this is a solid 10 out of 10. It fixes the mistakes of Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World, and it sets up really intriguing, plot elements for the future films of the MCU to come. Especially since we find out that Hydra is still around and kicking and has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. as a greater whole. So, well, that is my long-winded take on Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I hope it was informative enough. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you again next time when we cover Guardians of the Galaxy. Until then, take care, guys.